The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etschmann from Tash Invests and Ana Kresina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast, where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us.
Today I have Emma on the show with us, Emma from the Broke Generation. You've been on before, haven't you?
I have, but not in person. I think only virtual.
Yes. Yeah,
Wait,
we were in the Rask studio.
Oh yeah, we were. God, I have zero memory at all. I'm in the Rask studio a lot.
Oh, okay, sorry. It was too famous in the Rask studio.
No, I just think I thought that was, I thought it was for Rask rather than you, but you're right. It was for you.
It was us. Yes, we stole their studio.
Yeah.
But today, anyway, we're going to talk about going from employed to fully self-employed. But before we do that, we've got our money moments.
Yeah.
Do you have a money win or loss for today?
I do have a money win. I actually recently participated in this new kind of store selling concept in Melbourne. It's called Racket Club.
Racket Club?
Yeah.
Oh, sounds like a tennis group.
Yeah. And you rent a rack there and sell your clothes you don't want anymore, kind of like an indoor market type of thing. So you hire the rack and then you put all your barcodes on your clothes that like the system gives for you and you price them how you want.
Do you put barcodes on yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
fun.
like there's a bit of labor.
Yeah.
So like there's many pros and cons. But yeah, so you put all your barcodes on and then you drop your clothes off at the store and then you have that rack for, I think you can do 7 days or 12 days. I think I did 12 days or 6 days or 12 days. And then you just like get live sales tracking and it like people transact like a normal store. So they can like pick up 5 things from 5 different racks and then the barcode puts it onto your account and then they pay out whatever you make less 15%. So
amazing.
Like it's kind of high risk in a way because the rack is like $185 for the 12 days and obviously the 15%. And I was like, oh, and I don't have like particularly good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've already got like $400.
Wow, amazing.
And I've got a few more days left. So like I'm pretty happy with it. It's like money I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yeah, and it's better than selling on Facebook Marketplace when you have to message everyone and organize people picking stuff up. Yeah. And I don't like the idea of people coming to my house either.
No, and people want to try stuff on and I'm like, Susan, no.
No, this is my bedroom. No, thank you.
Yeah. So, and it's like, I think it's also things that you couldn't sell on Marketplace. Like I feel like Marketplace or Depop or whatever is really only good if you have something really specific that someone wants, like a Zimmerman dress, whereas it's like a country road knit that I'm selling for $20. Like no one's going to bother.
You're not going to drive for that.
No. So, and especially a lot of my stuff is neutral. So like people want to see it in person. So like it's really good that they can do that at store. Yeah. So yeah, you sell 20 things for $20. Like it's pretty good.
How many things can you sell?
Your rack fits, I think they said the max is 45 items, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And you can replenish it as you burn through it.
Oh,
so if you sell some stuff, you can go and drop off more.
And what was that place called?
Racket Club.
Racket Club.
Yeah.
Oh, what a good idea.
Big fan.
Amazing. My money win is a little bit less exciting. But last night, we had our event last night, which was super fun. And I didn't eat much for dinner, but I ordered Uber Eats afterwards and they had $1 loaded fries.
Loaded
Amazing.
Fries?
Yes.
Oh, you missed off this critical piece of information.
Yes, from the kebab shop, like the HSP, the loaded chicken fries.
It was a halal snack pack?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
For $1?
Yeah. I don't know why. It was $1 and then I paid $3 for the delivery fee.
$4 total?
Yeah.
For chips to come to your
door at 11:30 p.m. in Melbourne. I don't know why. We notice how like on Uber Eats they have sometimes the special offers?
No.
Oh, okay. Do you have Uber?
I haven't been on Uber Eats for a while.
Okay.
I haven't been doing it this year.
I've got the Uber One, the Uber Pass membership, and you get special like exclusive offers. And sometimes they're usually pretty shitty in Canberra, but the Melbourne ones are really good.
Interesting. I had that because I signed up when there was like a special.
It's free?
Yeah.
Like 99 cents
6
or
months
something?
free or something. Yeah. I signed up. But yeah, I don't remember ever getting $1 fries. But then again, I probably haven't been looking.
Yeah.
I've only been using it for Uber proper to go like to the airport.
I do like to have a scroll sometimes.
A scroll. Oh, a scroll. I was like a cinnamon.
No. A physical
Cheese
scroll.
and vegetables. Yeah, okay,
Instead of
fine.
scrolling on social media, it's like, oh, what's on Uber Eats?
See, I find scrolling on Uber Eats even more stressful than social media. I hate it.
Oh.
I think it's I'm so over familiar. I've lived in my area for a really long time.
Oh, so you know what's there.
I'm just like, yeah, I hate it. No. It's just overwhelmed for me.
Just no.
No, but it's kind of good because I get so overwhelmed and then I just don't order.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. I scroll for an hour and I'm like, nothing. I don't want anything anymore. Sorry.
Yeah, I know how to like deliberately overwhelm my brain. I do this too with buying clothes online. You know, when you're looking at like something and then you go to like see similar or like you may also like.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh wait, there's 1 million pairs of cream boots. I can't possibly decide when I'm buying them.
Yeah, I can't shop on Iconic or ASOS or anything because of that.
Much.
I
Yeah.
love Nude Lucy, where I've got my pants from that I wear all the time. But that's because I don't have that much stuff. Oh, was it? Oh, nice. Yeah, but they've got like not that many things.
No, and I can only wear like stretchy stuff or bias cut, like the pants and stuff don't fit me from there. So I'm like, it's a really small amount of stuff to choose from.
Yeah. And then because I feel like you're not making the most of your shipping if you haven't looked on the whole website.
Yes.
Which is, you can't look on the whole website a lot of the time.
And like, especially now I'm better with buying and better with money. I always want to know that I'm getting the best thing, like the best, like not only the best price for that thing, but like the best pair of trousers, or like, is there one that's actually a better composition? And then,
Or is there one that's $10 cheaper?
Yeah.
And then you can't decide.
Overwhelm yourself.
Yes. And then don't buy anything. Yeah. Good hack.
Not great for your brain, but after a while, you just don't even want to look. So.
Yeah. It works for me as well.
Me too.
But back in today's actual episode, when did you quit your job?
I quit my job in the Christmas holidays of 2021. So like January 2022, I didn't go back to work.
And what were you doing beforehand for everyone who doesn't know?
I was working in like a branding advertising agency, but I was only working part-time at this time. So I had previously like in 2020, 2021, 2022.
All blends in together.
All the same picture, in my opinion, but I'm trying to get the dates right. Yeah, so when COVID hit, I was at my original full-time job working as a copywriter in an e-commerce small business brand. And COVID happened, and so I would have been working from home for that job, yeah. And then like in between that like little reprieve of lockdown where we were like, maybe it's over.
Yes.
I connected with a guy on LinkedIn who was starting this agency and he was looking for a copywriter that was in the finance space. So that had come from like me doing broke gen stuff as my side hustle. And he was like, I don't have full-time work for you though, but what if I gave you like, it worked out to be that like the salary that I was on in my full-time job working 5 days was like 68K. And he was going to give me like 52K for 3 days work. So it was kind of like I was getting paid 4 days of, it was like a really in between. Like it wasn't my whole salary for 3 days, but it was a good salary for 3 days or something. So that was really good for me. And I was like, oh, this is the perfect like stepping stone, because I'd wanted to maybe look at doing broke gen full time, well, broke gen and freelance and all the other bits that I do during 2020, like 2019, I was starting to think about maybe I would like when I leave that job, I'll do it full time. But then because of COVID, I was like, oh, so risky.
Yeah.
Little did we know that those 2 years ended up being like the most lucrative years. And I probably should have done it. But when I got this part-time opportunity, that's when
it's such a big step as well, going from full-time to fully self-employed. Like I did the part-time thing as well.
Yes.
But it's a big step.
But it's also kind of the worst of, did you find it was the worst of both worlds?
Yeah, I couldn't do anything.
No.
Yeah. I was working 3 days as well in a health. I was working as a positive behavior support practitioner, which was really fun, but it was really hard to go from caring about that job and then caring about social media because they are complete polar opposite different worlds. And then I had a privacy issue as well. Like usually if you work in those roles, you don't want a public social media profile because people can Google you and find out stuff about you and stalk you. Yeah. So having both was a bit challenging. And then I felt like I couldn't do the podcast properly because I wasn't that available and I was tired, but I also couldn't do my job properly because I was only working a few days. So yeah, it didn't really work out.
That's interesting you say that, having two things that are the polar opposite, because my two things were kind of similar, like especially because a lot of my self-employment stuff is still freelance copy. And then I was also working on this client that was like heavily in the finance space, like B2B finance, but still I was like, oh, maybe it would be easier if they were totally unrelated. Maybe not.
I think it really depends. Like if it's not, it's just really hard when you're like hearing about people's really devastating stories and then you go home and you post about investing $100 a week to make $1 million. And it just feels like very insignificant and like dystopian almost to like deal with those issues and then go and talk about money, which is like great and they're both really needed. But it was too hard to switch my brain. And I was just like, oh, no one cares. Like this doesn't matter. Yeah. There's bigger problems in the world.
That's so true, actually. I did not have that issue because, working in branding is not meaningful. I think something else I struggled with, which is like kind of a personality thing for me as well, is, and I hadn't realized this until somebody else online that I follow articulated it. When you have, even if you work full time and you have a side hustle, in your side hustle, you're the authority. Like you call the shots, you're the one that makes the decisions, you only have yourself to report to. Whereas like whether that is a part-time job and a part-time business or whatever kind of mix, when you also have a job, it's like suddenly you're like a cog in a machine and you have to be I'm not a team player as it is. I'm terrible. Like I'm an only child. I can't help it. Yeah. I'd rather just do it myself. Yeah. I'm terrible at delegating, terrible at managing, terrible team player. Even when I worked in like Costco, I was like, just give me my own section and just you all fuck off. Like I'll just look after them myself.
As well. Yeah. I don't like rules that don't have a real reason for them. Like if people can't explain why I have to do something, I'm like, well, this is dumb. And like, obviously that doesn't work in a real job.
Yeah. And I think as well with like the authority, when you have your own business and it's just you're really good at like not cutting corners, but like cutting out, you don't have 15 people to check something. You're just like, just get it out. You don't have processes for stuff because it's just you doing the work. Whereas like I was working in like an agency, a new agency nonetheless, that was like run by people from like older school advertising style. No. And they wanted like codes for everything and processes for everything. And I was like, just fucking send it. Like just do the work. And why are we doing it like this? Why are we having 18 meetings? Like, why does this need to be like, they'd be like, put this in a brief document because that's how it works. But I'd just be like, but why don't I just do it? Like, why waste time?
Yeah, actually though. And why do 4 people need to be involved if like I just need to do it?
Yeah.
That's so hard.
That was hard for me, like battling the brains. But like, I don't know if that would be the same for everybody.
Yeah, I guess there's so many unique challenges. Like even just being in a job, if you're just working one full-time job, there's always going to be challenges like that. But it is hard when you live in slightly different worlds or like having to switch that brain, I find really hard.
And like switching your passion, like I would have some weeks in my job where I really cared about my job and I loved the people and it was really fun. And I would literally just like want to burn my business to the ground. And then you have a bad day at work and then you're like, well, fuck this. I'm going to do my business. And then, it's just kind of like.
I think there's the perks to having both as well. Because when I wasn't liking work, it was good to be like, oh, I've got a podcast, and like vice versa as well. Like it's good to have that balance. But I feel like it'll never be completely balanced too.
No, I think it's very rational to be like, well, it's great because you can bolster your, like flip all of those things we've just said.
Yeah.
But I think that's like such an ideal world type of thing. I don't think the brain actually works like that.
No, definitely not. I found that with even writing a book as well, changing from doing the podcast to writing the book and then making social content has been really hard too because you're in like one mindset and then you have to switch.
Yeah, mode switching in business is really hard all the time. Like, oh, now I'm an accountant. Great.
Yes.
Even when you have an accountant, you still have to do the accounts. Like what?
Yeah.
That's some bullshit.
I don't want to do it today. I don't want to reply to my emails today. Yeah. What made you finally make the decision to quit?
I was having a really hard time at that job. It wasn't the right fit for me. I probably should have thought, look, I barely thought about it. They could have been like, do you want to shovel shit 3 days a week? Like I would have done it because what was attracting me to it was the 3 day. I hadn't thought it through. I wasn't even 100% sure what I would be doing. Again, because it was a new business. So like they didn't necessarily really know. I didn't really foresee any of the challenges with like splitting the two. Didn't foresee mental health challenges I went through that year. I mean, nobody can.
Yeah.
We also didn't know what was happening with lockdown, lots of stuff. It just wasn't the right fit. They weren't the right fit for me. I wasn't the right fit for them. We went about things really differently. And so I think I just kind of got to the point, I actually don't know really. I think the fact that it was the end of the year, I was like, oh, this is really good because I'm going to be, they were closing for 2 weeks or whatever it is that businesses do at that time. And I was, just like, I think now's the time. Like my closest friend there had also left. And I think there was another conversation where that sort of came later, but I kind of knew that my role there wasn't that necessary either. So I think I probably would have been very redundant regardless because when I had that conversation, they were like, well, yeah, we were going to have a chat to you about like what your skill set is and what we need. And
well, that's a bit brutal if you're quitting already and they're like, oh, we didn't even want you anyway. Like,
I think I'd said something because I was sort of framing it of like why I was leaving as like, we're not the right fit on many levels, but also the way that, because it was a new business, they were like, yeah. And I had come in to work on a main client that wasn't as main anymore. The type of copy that I'm good at was not the copy that they were good at. And that was really bad for my mental health because it meant I wasn't good at anything. But also, I was never going to be good at that. I'm a different kind of copywriter. I don't work in advertising.
Yeah.
I don't work in that old school space of like coming up with a TV campaign. That's not what I've done.
Yeah, okay.
So then I was in an environment where I already had low self-esteem. We were going through a pandemic.
Yeah.
I'm on social media, which is,
a whole other
mental challenge.
Yeah.
And then also I'm in an environment that requires a skill set that I haven't got.
Yeah.
And I just noticed it was downhill for my confidence and that was bleeding into everything. And I was like, I've got to get out of here. Otherwise I'm never gonna, I guess, rebuild. Like I have to, while I've got like a shred of being able to do it, I've got to like try it. So yeah, so I did.
How did you prepare financially for it? Was it more of like I'm leaving now, or were you planning it for a little while?
I'd been planning it for a little while financially. Like I prepared to have like 3 months of my business expenses and personal expenses like set aside so that I had like 3 months to kind of just see what happened and like almost recover a little bit from
like have a break.
Yeah. Like I didn't like take time off or anything. I was still working and I went like after the, main week of Christmas, I went into doing work and everything. But I like got myself a co-working space, paid 3 months up front because I was conscious that I liked the passive socialization at that workplace.
Yeah.
And I was like, feeling like I was going to be on my own was really hard. So I went to this, which wasn't the best move for me, the co-working space. I didn't end up connecting with people the way I wanted to there. But yeah, I paid all that upfront for 3 months, but then that 3 months went so quick.
Yeah.
And I was like, uh-oh.
Here we are.
Now I have to manage cash flow like a business, because I knew I'd have to change everything, which I'm sure we'll come on to. But I didn't want to have to pile that on to like, oh my God, not only have I got to do everything that I've got to do, but I've also got to try and manage money. I was like, just pay everything up front for a bit.
Yeah.
And then just exist. But yeah, that time went really quickly.
That's such a good idea though, pay everything up front. Because I was a bit surprised by how challenging it was to change financial wise. Like I feel like I'm quite good with money and I've managed money really well. But when I changed from being a sole trader to a company, that kind of threw everything out of whack a little bit. And it took me like a good few months to finally set everything up again and get my systems in place.
Yeah. You have to relearn everything.
Yeah. And it doesn't make sense either. It's like, why are there all these rules? Why are things so separate? How do I pay myself? I just won't pay myself because I can't be bothered dealing with it.
And there's so much more on the line. I mean, I'm not a company yet, but there's half the reason I haven't changed is because they take you a lot more seriously when you're a company. Like there's, if you make a small mistake as a sole trader, like it's kind of easy to rectify.
Yeah, even like registering for GST, I was a bit late for that. So I got fined and then you've got to call them and say sorry and ask for it back.
Say sorry.
Yeah. Well, if you're nice to them, they seem to give me it back. I don't know if they would keep doing that. Okay. I've done it a few times because when I switched to a company, I thought I wouldn't have to pay my pay-as-you-go things anymore. I was like, I'm not earning any money. They won't charge me. But they kept charging me like 15 grand a quarter.
15 grand?
Yeah. Because I had a year where I like went from earning like nothing to earning like 100 grand or whatever on my ABN. So then they were like, we're taxing you as if you're earning that again on top of the tax I was already paying.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I paid that late and got a fine. But now it's all sorted.
Yeah. Oh my God, the ATO.
But it's hard when you're trying to make those decisions and like set up your life and set up a routine. And then you also have to be like, how do I pay myself?
Yeah.
What is GST? When do I need to pay that?
And like the different reporting and then also the different management of money in your personal life.
Yes.
Is so different.
And not seeing my business money as my money either, because you have to pay GST and tax all the time. But I see that figure and I'm like, wow, I've got all this money, but it's not actually mine.
It's not your money. I always talk about this in terms of transitioning as like, you have to, and honestly, I'm still like, I'm 2 years in. This is my third year doing it full time. Is it? 2020? Yeah. This is my third year doing it full time.
Wow.
And like, I'm still like the penny's dropping still. Because there's this thing our friend Peter Sarah says that years 3 to 5 in business are harder than 1 and 2. And I'm like,
interesting.
100%.
Oh, I'm not there yet. Oh God.
Everything is a win in the early days.
Yeah.
The first year you make it through full-time self-employed, you're like, oh yeah.
I've survived.
Yeah, I was like, I made $60,000.
Yeah.
And that's like, well, just about matching my corporate salary, like my full-time job salary. But then the next year it's like, oh yeah, I made a bit more. But then like by year 3, the penny starts to drop in terms of, and I think, to bring in my financial psychology lens, it's taught me so much about the way I see what's a lot of money or big numbers. Like previously when it's a side hustle or it's your first year and you get paid $10,000 for something, you're like,
yeah, because it's just a bonus.
Because I've never, and even if it was all your income, I've never made 10 grand in 1 month, even through a salary, like even before tax, never. But then when you bring it in as a business, it's like, well, hang on, that's not 10K that's going to come in every single month for 12 months. What actually went into earning that? You can give 10% immediately to GST. Then you've got to think about superannuation. You've got to think about income tax. You've got to think about how much of that actually goes, how much have you actually paid to earn that?
Yeah.
Not literally, like not in terms of you made 10K from, I don't know, ads and then you paid 5 grand in the ads. Like, but in like, what are your running costs? What like, even like the amount we fly around interstate.
Yeah.
Like how much of that and what is that cost? Like all these kind of like fringe costs that allow you to exist to be the type of person that would earn 10K for something. It's like, then you get into a bit of a head fuck because you're like, why is money so hard? I made 10 grand doing something comparably easy to going into an office every day for 5 days. But all the stuff, like 90% of the things that you do, especially in modern businesses with social media, don't actually generate any revenue.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a huge overestimation. But like,
no, but actually though,
sometimes 90% of my week, like right here now, this isn't making me any money.
No.
This is my time that's not paid.
And we're paying to be, I'm paying to be here.
And we're paying to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, so yeah, you might get 10 grand for something that in isolation was a day's work or a week's work, but that's got to pay for the 8 weeks that you didn't work.
And then no one emailing you for any sponsored things for the next few months.
Yeah. Or client work or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
Or something works and it sells, so you do more of it and then no one wants it anymore.
Yeah.
Or you run an event and you go, yeah, we're going to run an event. Everyone wants an event.
Yeah.
And then you commit to the 4 grand minimum spend that you're up for whether one person comes or 100 people come.
Yeah.
and then they don't sell.
Well, even like we're talking about this the last few days, the things we spent money on, like the flights to come here, the Ubers, like spending a night in a hotel for me, the studio, the event as well. Things like getting lollies for the event and stickers and Sharpies. Like Sharpies are so expensive these days.
Oh my God.
That was wild. $6 for one Sharpie.
One?
Yeah. And I got 2.
Did you pick them up last night? Do you still have them?
I think you've got them.
Oh, right. Oh, they must be in the bag. Yeah.
That's okay. You can keep it. Gifts for you. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Changed my mind. It is paid.
Yes. One Sharpie.
But like, yeah, I mean, that all sounds like really negative. It's not that it's negative. It's just, you just don't think about those things as an employee. And even sometimes I'll talk to like friends or family that are employees and they'll be like, oh, because I'm really upfront with what I get paid for something. I'll go, yeah, I got paid $2,000 for that. And they'll go, $2,000? I have to work 2 weeks for that. And I'm like, yeah, but same to a degree. Like not always. Sometimes you have a really good run. But even then, nothing's necessarily replicable. You create replicability, I suppose. But there's just no guarantee of money coming in. So you have to be thinking one step ahead all the time. It's exhausting.
Yeah, it is. And trying to, like you were saying before, be the accountant, being the marketing person, being the content creator, being like the event planner. Like 100%. You wear so many different hats, which is so tiring.
And we talk about those costs and it's, flying around and doing podcasts. And like in theory, if you want to get serious about it, yeah, all that stuff's kind of optional. Like you could cut that out if you had to.
But then it's not that optional if you want to do well.
Then it's not. But also even the stuff that's not optional, an accountant.
Yes.
Having a logo,
paying
website,
for an
hosting
accountant
fees.
for a company is so much more expensive.
So
like
much more expensive.
$1,500 is like a base thing.
Yeah.
And then you've got to pay for your own personal accountant tax thing as well. Just like all these things start adding up.
Yeah. Like when you add up everything, it's like, $17.99 for Squarespace, $200 for MailChimp. Like,
yeah.
And that's just like base regardless of what happens, like driving around everywhere. And it's not to say that, I think this is the hardest thing. It's like adjusting to that being the reality. I think when you're starting out or it's a side hustle and it's hard, you're like, oh, I'll eventually grow out of that. And it's like, no, it's not like an initial, that's business.
Yeah.
You have to accept it. Just like getting up and going into an office space and dealing with fuckwits in corporate all day is hard. Like that's having a job. I think there's this idea that everything in business is easier.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not harder or easier, it's just different.
Yeah.
And you accept all those things as a job because you've had one for years. But in a business, everything's new and it's kind of like, oh, there's all this stuff and it's like, it's not necessarily better or worse. It's literally just a different way of making money.
Yeah, like different pros and cons. Like there's so many benefits to it as well.
So many benefits. And you just have to let go of the way you saw freedom, the way you saw money, what you perceive to be a big number.
Yeah, that's been quite interesting for me because I used to be so frugal and now doing business stuff, you have to get used to paying more money. Like you were saying, the minimum spend for the event, we had to pay that up front and I just had to transfer that.
Yeah.
And that kind of warps my idea of money a little bit and trying to be like, that's not okay for me to spend personally, but it's a business expense and we'll probably make the money back. Or even spending a few $100s to hire a studio for a few hours. Or I paid $100 more, $120 more to get a later flight because I wanted to sleep in before the event. And like usually I wouldn't do that because it doesn't matter.
Because will the event be better if you're not tired?
Yes, definitely. You don't want to be like yawning the whole way through your presentation.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it kind of, definitely has been hard to not apply that to my personal life as well.
Yeah, well, because I've always said that spenders do quite well in business because they're not scared to spend money.
Yes.
And I feel like I had a really good insight into running a small business from my first job that I ever had in Australia. I worked for a small social media agency for years. I started off as like 1 or 2 days a week and then I went up to full time. And I was really close with the director of the agency and I saw how she would invest in like getting professional photography and having a nice space for meetings or like just little extras for when sending things out to clients, like having back then like a branded letterhead or something like that, or doing something, client gifting and stuff like that, which is all money. But I think already being a spender in my personal life and then also having that insight, I went into business, like even when it was a side hustle, professional photos were done. I paid to have a website done. Like I paid a lot of things.
Yeah, I've always been really envious of your website because it's so good.
Thank you. I paid a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
And I feel like you can look at it a lot of different ways, but I do think it's been helpful, like comparing it to you being a frugal person. There's parts of business that you need to bootstrap. And I still bootstrap stuff now. Like even when I went on my recent trip to Sydney, that was a necessary trip, couldn't have cut it out. But I was like, this trip is not making me any money at all. I've got to keep this really low. I've got to use the bus. I've got to, which, I know sounds so privileged, like choosing to use the bus. But like a lot of business people get Ubers because it's more efficient and your time is money.
Yeah.
But there was no, like when you're trimming fat, you still have to get frugal sometimes, but also you have to be so comfortable with spending money.
Yes. Like spending $4,000 on the event and then being like, because I got the Sky Bus yesterday and I hate the Sky Bus and I know I'm privileged as well. I just don't enjoy it. I was like, I just spent all of this money. And like I've got all this stuff and I bought all these things, but I'll get the Sky Bus anyway. Yeah,
exactly. But like it's got to be you've got to make sure, and I think this has been my biggest spending mistakes in business, being all or nothing about stuff. Like or thinking that everything's a line in the sand. Like, oh, maybe you make more money so you can start getting Ubers instead of the bus. But then almost seeing that as like a one-way decision of like, oh, I don't get the bus because I get Ubers now. Because you're at that level with business, but also not being afraid to sometimes be like, actually, I've got to cut the costs. Or maybe you start staying in nicer hotels when you travel, but actually then you're like, well, I kind of need to stay in the $58 travel lodge because
this month isn't as good.
Things are tough. Yeah. Like it's an economic cycle and you're riding it. There's no stability.
And this applies to your normal life as well. Like we've been saying, you have to give up something to buy something else and not see it as giving up, but you do have to prioritize things over things. Yeah.
Especially when it's like it's your business and your money. It's like it bleeds into the way you spend money for your personal life. Like you don't want to, I find the hard thing is if the business, even though I'm a sole trader and it is all one, it's also not. If the business has a good month or something good happens, mentally I'm like, oh, well, I've got more money to spend then. Yeah. And it's like, no. Yeah. You have to. Whereas if you get a bonus at work or something.
It is your money.
It is your money. And you can go, oh yeah, great. We can book a holiday because I got that bonus. Or you get a pay rise. But if the business does well, like that really, you have to stay totally separate from it because you have to ride that success into something else or put it into getting your photos done or use it as cash flow.
Yeah, save it for your next 3 months of wages. Yeah. I stopped tracking my spending a little while ago because I was like, I don't need this anymore. And I've been kind of shocked recently at how quickly things add up. Like we've been talking about airport trips. And you're like, the flight's only $100, which is great. But then there's a $60 Uber there, like an $80 Uber somewhere else. Then you've got to buy like lunch and dinner. And then you've got to get the train, which in Sydney is really expensive as well. And it all really adds up so quickly from what was like a quick $200 trip is like $1,000.
Exactly. But equally, you've got to be mindful of your time and also where you're going. Like if you're getting off a flight to go to a meeting or to speak somewhere.
You can't be all sweaty when you get there. Yeah. Yeah. Speaking stuff I found quite challenging too, because you do have to be very nice and dressed nice and presentable and like ready. And that's so hard when you're running around in the airport.
Exactly. So then you go, oh, well, I flew out the day before, so I'm not stressed.
Yes.
But then
there's the airport.
I'll pay for that. Yeah.
And like, it sounds quite negative, but it is like, there's so many great things as well. So there's all these things that I never really thought about beforehand. And like trying to change that mindset has been really challenging to like, yes, I spend on business, but that doesn't mean I need to fly at the ideal time every time I fly somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And yes, I'll spend things in my personal life and in my business, and there has to be some kind of balance there. Like you can't put it all into business, or unless you're consciously, doing that for a period of time. But yeah, you have to, or knowing when to like pay yourself a bit more because it seems so simple to just pay yourself as little as possible. But then, would you be a better business owner if you had more flexibility or
you had more time, you were less stressed, you went to the gym more, all of that kind of stuff.
Had lived closer to work, I don't know, like
or even just trying to price stuff as well and not considering all the things that go into it, like speaking stuff as things that have gotten as something that's gotten to me recently, where it's like, oh, it is the flights and the Ubers and the food and the time, and then like an hour event ends up being like 2 whole days gone pretty much, and I've not like accounted for that.
Exactly. And yeah, that's like your actual time and your energy and time that you're not doing other stuff. And also, there's certain things where certain speaking things that you take on, you're not then going to go and speak probably at a competitor, or same with sponsored stuff.
Like, the competitors. Oh my God. Yeah, that really gets to me as well. I never really realized how hard that was going to be, because you see ads on TV and they'll be like, Woolies, Coles, Officeworks, Kmart, they're all like one after another. But then in reality, they're all competitors, which has been wild.
So you can't, it's not only contractually, I can't work with X, Y, and Z because I worked with A, B, and C. It's also, and I always try and price this in, and it's very hard to sell in because they're like, well, we're not asking you for exclusivity. It's the perception. Like, it's not only the perception of the other brand, like, oh, she's just worked with Officeworks, we're not going to work with her because that's a competitor to us, even if she's allowed to.
Yeah.
But also the perception from like your audience. If you worked with a competitor, like it's very different. I know it's different on social media compared to TV. Like you wouldn't call up Channel 7 and be like, I thought you supported Coles.
Yeah.
You just advertised Woolies. Whereas influencers, it's like, or content creators or, whatever, podcasts, it's like you have to kind of pick a hill and die on it.
Yeah. It's really, it's been quite challenging being on social media in that way, definitely, when you're trying to navigate making money and being a business owner while also navigating everyone else's thoughts and opinions. And it's great that people send us their feedback, but it is quite challenging, and there's so many people telling you what you should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other episode, I think.
Yeah, that's probably another episode.
If someone is thinking about quitting their job and they want to go full-time, self-employed, what advice would you give them?
I would always, obviously know what you're going to do first.
Yeah.
And I'm always an advocate of having it as a side hustle. So assuming you already do, I would make sure that you've got, depending on your situation, 3 to 6 months of business expenses and living if you haven't already got that, because or if you have already got that, you need a bigger buffer than you needed when you were employed, even though there's always a risk of being made redundant. There's things like paying out your notice period, redundancy pay. Like obviously you don't get any of that.
And also the money you need to start the business or do the business things. Yeah, definitely.
I think the other thing I would have done differently that I didn't do that I think would have been beneficial is like looking really clear. And I kind of did this intuitively, but I'll admit that I definitely went into doing it full time, believing that sort of lie that was around on social media a lot at that point, that when you back yourself, the floodgates will open.
Yeah.
And everybody was saying that they'd quit their job during COVID or they'd lost their job and they went all in on themselves. And 3 months later, I'd already replaced what I'd made for the year. And I was like, oh, cool. That I didn't know how that was going to happen.
But like everyone else is doing
I was like, that's what everyone says. And people would say to me, sometimes you just got to back yourself. And I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, cool. I backed myself. Now
I backed myself and it didn't work out like that at all. Like my first year I made like 60K like in profit. So like if the business wants to retain anything, then I pay myself, it's not a lot of money.
Yeah.
Especially when you're like, I think age comes into it too, because there's an opportunity cost of leaving the workforce when you're older, because what could you be earning if you'd stayed in a job and climbed a ladder or whatever?
Yeah. And going from like that part-time job plus the broke generation stuff on top of that is like quite big compared to like, now I've just got the broke generation, because I had the same as well.
Exactly. And I was maybe making like 52K in my job and like 40K on the side. But like, then
that's a good salary.
Just left, great salary together.
Yeah.
But when it's just left, and I would have just been a bit more strategic about, okay, how am I going to use the extra time resource to turn that into money? I didn't do that enough. I definitely fell for the myth that if I backed myself, it would pay off.
Yes.
So please take it from me, and it won't necessarily, not to be really negative, just to be realistic.
Just be more cautious.
Yeah.
I think the side hustle thing first definitely is really good. Like having an idea that you've checked beforehand and you know that works and you know that you can monetize, and just saving more money as well. I'm glad I had quite a bit invested before I quit my job, and I knew that I could always move home with my parents, and I knew that these things were all there for me if I needed them. So I felt I was able to make more decisions and spend on more things if I needed to. But it can be really hard.
Yeah, like I think maybe being aware that, like if I were to knowing what I know, if I were to give myself advice back then, even though I was always going to leave because it was more of an emotional decision than like, my business is thriving.
Yeah.
I think I just would have been a bit more aware of the fact that you're probably not going to be contributing to your super for a year or two, unless you do really well, and thinking about maybe what that means for your life and like what other things you have to fall back on. Like I'm really lucky that I have a partner that has a full-time job, so I have like some security there, and that if the shit really hit the fan, I couldn't lose all my income because his income wouldn't cover us both, but there's something there.
You could have some bad months for that.
Or if I can't buy the groceries this week or something, but I can't just sort of go home. I knew that wasn't an option.
Because your family's in the UK.
My family's in the UK and I couldn't go home anyway.
Yeah.
So I think maybe just like it's really different for everyone's situation. If you've got loads of support and if you could call your parents and go, I need $5,000, go for it.
Yeah.
Like quit your job, take the risk and do it. If you don't, you need to have your own $5,000.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably...
It's definitely missing from the conversation when you see people be like, I quit my job, moved to Bali, doing all these wonderful things.
Yeah.
But you're not seeing all the things they have as a security blanket.
Yeah. And that sort of belief that it will kind of work out. I don't doubt that happened for some people. I'm sure that sometimes when they went from having 2 days to 5 days to work on their business, it did really well.
Yeah. What's the stats of how many businesses fail? Like it's quite a few, isn't it?
Well, it's like 98%.
Yeah, but you don't hear about that on social media.
No. And I wonder if that is different now with digital businesses. I'm not sure.
If they're counting us as businesses or not.
Yeah. But I think what I wish I had been more aware of is, that might happen, but hang on, what's the risk if it doesn't happen?
Yes.
Because I didn't sort of take off and explode, but I also didn't lose everything. I was sort of somewhere in the middle. I'm still going.
Yeah.
But I think it's been really over the last year, I've really been aware of the vulnerability of being a business owner when you also have a degree of vulnerability in your own kind of personal life, I suppose. Not having parents to move in with, not, being your parents' emergency fund rather than them being yours in a way.
Yeah.
Like there's people that can call their parents for $5,000. There's people that can't. And there's people whose parents called them for $5,000.
Yes.
Without telling you my whole life story, I'm the latter of that.
And we're complete opposites in that. Like we've had so many conversations where I could do that and I could go home and my parents are very supportive. While they don't just give me money whenever, like I can ask them if I need. And I know that in the back of my mind, where it's completely different for your situation.
Yeah. But I mean, and likewise, other people have got, kids and stuff. Like I haven't got other dependents. So like thinking about what shit hitting the fan could look like for you.
Yeah, and what your plan is.
Making sure, we're bordering into like finance stuff now, but like another thing I did, maybe terrible advice, but while I still had a salary, I got credit card. Because I've always had to not literally use credit cards as my emergency fund, but like I've always wanted to maintain credit
Yeah.
in the absence of being able to call my parents. Yeah.
Yeah. And not being able to get a credit card if you don't have the income for it.
Yeah, like suddenly I'm self-employed. Maybe they won't give it to, maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't. But I was like, well, I'm just going to get a credit card so that I have that. Yeah. If you've got debt, you know, how are you going to pay that off with a variable income? Like, how are you going to manage your finances? Insurances, like income protection insurance within your super.
Yeah.
That can sometimes follow you. You got to check the T's and C's and stuff. But like, have you got life insurance? Have you got that set up? Like everything, health insurance, you know, how is that set up for you to then suddenly not have a regular income? Do you want to buy a property? Don't quit your job if you're about to buy a property.
Yes, yeah, it's really hard. I want to buy another property this year and it's so much harder when you're self-employed.
Yeah.
Like they want so much more from you and it makes it really hard. And it's, like quitting my job has been really great and I'm glad I did it and I love doing this stuff and it's been cool to learn so many new things, but it is hard and you do need to think about all of that stuff as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a trade-off and I don't think I wouldn't have done it, but I don't think I was clear really on the decision I was making.
Yeah, I didn't think about it enough as well because I quit and then I moved to a new city, which probably wasn't the best idea ever because it's been really lonely and not ideal. Yeah. But I didn't really think about that. I was like, oh, I'll quit and it'll be magical and everything will be fine. I didn't think about like the co-working space or like making friends or like what my routine would look like.
Yeah, I mean, having connection, being able to have human connection in business costs money. Unless you happen to already have really good friends that are self-employed and you can go to each other's houses. But yeah, I'm in this battle now that I'm taking a break from my co-working space expense. And when I come back to potentially going back to that, I'm going to be trading off this like cash flow benefit of not paying for it. But then again, it's that intangible stuff. Yeah. Will I make more money if mental health wise I have more connection? Will that give me more longevity in business? May I make a connection?
Yeah.
You know, it's
even like meeting Peter, she can have all the call outs in this. Like she's amazing and she's so full of energy and she's such like a supportive person. And if you don't have that, like there's so many things you probably wouldn't have done because you'd be like, oh no, I won't do it. I probably can't do that.
And also some people I know in that space, like they get clients from there because if you target markets in that space, you know, sometimes it can be unquantifiably beneficial. And again, like it's that perception of numbers. That space cost me $700, $800, $900 a month, depending on the plan you're on, which is so not insignificant, especially if you think about that when you're an employee. Would you have taken on a $900 a month subscription?
No, that's huge to sit at a desk.
Yeah, it's huge. But at the same time, it's also, say it's 10 grand for the year all up. Well, if as a business owner, you have complete control over where your money comes from. So do you go, oh, I'm going to cut that out because it's so expensive? Or do you go, I need to try and find 10 grand extra? How do I make sure that 10 grand is extra and not just 10 grand I would have made in anyway?
Yes, yeah.
Or is it like so many things to think about?
Not even the math answer and you're like, no, I like it. I need it. I wouldn't survive otherwise.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And am I taking that lower cash flow? Like, what's the trade-off?
And it's so hard not having a boss that you can just go and be like, hey, is this a good idea? Yeah. Am I allowed to do this? Like, I miss that so much.
That's me.
Yeah. Just ask myself.
Not
I
me
wish I could just like pay someone a boss. Yeah.
Yeah.
I loved like when I did stuff at work, you had to get like the managers to sign off on it. So if you did anything wrong, like it was their responsibility, not yours. And I really missed that.
Yeah.
Like everything's on me now.
Yeah. Like reading through contracts.
Oh, yes. Just want to send it to someone else, but no, just us.
Truly. I've started asking my husband to do it.
Oh, nice.
I'd never thought about this before, but I've started to be. The other day, I think it was for our event.
Yeah.
I needed to read through the contract and I should never admit this on air, but I'm terrible that when it's like an event that we've sold tickets for, it's all booked, I'm like, just fucking sign it. Like we're not backing out of this. And I was like, obviously I'm not, I'll never do that. But that's what my brain wanted.
I've done that a little bit as well. Where I'm like, I've read the content already. It's fine, whatever. Yeah. Like it'll be fine. And then it's not fine, but.
Yeah. And I'm so overwhelmed. I'm like, I don't have to, I'll try and read it and I literally can't take it in.
But it's like 20 pages of little words that don't make any sense.
So I was like, oh my God, I have another human being that's taken me on as a partner.
Yes, he's decided.
Can you read through this contract? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. And I'm like, oh my God, why haven't I done this before?
Oh, yeah. That's awesome. I need to remember that and give it to my boyfriend as well. Like it's your turn now.
Yeah. If you've got like a dad that's good at that stuff.
Oh my God, I've forgotten about my dad.
Yeah.
What? Oh, he should have edited my book. That would have been great.
My dad would be like, what is a contract? Yes. He was a cop, so they didn't do all that. No paperwork. Well, actually, lots of paperwork, but not like corporate contracts.
I did try and get my dad to read through the contract when I was getting licensed, but it was too hard trying to explain everything and like why things are in there and how that works. So it wasn't the best in the end because he was like, what is this? And I was like,
don't know.
Yeah, good question. I don't really know. I didn't introduce you very well at the start. You're Emma from the Broke Generation. Where can people find you?
You can find me, if you enjoyed this business conversation, I have a business podcast called Broke Business. Not sure when this is going out, but the second season may have dropped. It's dropping sometime soon when I can get around to editing it. We're talking about money conversations for business owners, self-employed, side hustle, that kind of stuff. I also have my main podcast, the Broke Generation podcast, where we talk about money behavior, psychology, being good with money. Speaking of which, I have my book, Good with Money.
It's very good. Would recommend.
Thank you. It's bright yellow. You'll spot it in Kmart, Dimmicks, Big W, all that stuff. And social media at the.broke.generation. I'm usually there.
Usually, sometimes.
Sometimes hiding in a corner rocking.
Yes, fun. But the book is really good. You should definitely buy it. I found it great. Like, I've read so many finance books, but this one was really good and a bit of a different part of the conversation, which you need to have more of.
Bit of a different twist.
And I remember all of your like really personal stories about cellulite cream, like those things stuck in my head. Worth reading.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Okay, goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invests or me at Ana Kresina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etschmann, who is an authorized representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorized representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing. So make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.